What a difference 24 hours make. Yesterday I was a speaker at Portsmouth Club, and today I'm introducing the speaker. That's a wonderful world in family Rotary. Dr. Maggie Morris is it? How do you pronounce this? Thank you. Researching the pathogenesis.
Yeah.
Well, you know, a whole different world in my world. Of type 1 diabetes. She is currently an associate professor at Eastern Virginia Medical School. Teaches both medical and graduate students. Dr. Morris is currently involved in 2 JDRF-funded studies and investigating potential initiating factors in type 1 diabetes. Dr. Morris got a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Michigan, followed by a PhD from the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center in Dallas. She moved to the University of Virginia for her postdoctoral fellowship and was recruited by EVMS by Dr. Nadler. Is that right, Nadler? In 2008. She was also highly involved in activities with both the American Diabetes Association, JDRF, including, what is JDRF?
Juvenile Diabetes Research.
Thank you. Including the and bike rides. When she's not researching, she spends time with her husband and her 2 daughters. It's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Maggie Morris.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me today. So I want to give you a little bit of an update on diabetes and what's going on locally at EVMS. And certainly, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take those. So diabetes is a huge problem worldwide. And you'll notice that in the US, 39 million people have diabetes. Now, worldwide, it becomes an even bigger issue. So it's not just a US problem, it's certainly a worldwide problem. And this problem is increasing. So we're seeing by 2035, we expect a 53% increase if the rates continue at the current level, with North America and the Caribbean seeing a 30% increase. So it's certainly something to be concerned about and something to take action on. So you probably have seen headlines with diabetes on time. Over 29 million Americans have diabetes. Primarily that's type 2. 90 million Americans have pre-diabetes. That means that they have some kind of metabolic dysfunction where their body is not quite working the way it should. 1.7 million new cases in 2012 were diagnosed in people aged 20 and older. More than 3,500 each day. There are complications of diabetes that lead to more than 235,000 deaths, 73,000 amputations, and 2 out of every 3 people with diabetes die from cardiovascular disease. Over 50,000 began treatment for kidney failure, and 12,000 to 24,000 became blind. So, and I know many of you have mentioned to me that you've known people that have had these complications or have passed away from complications due to diabetes. And the cost to us is huge. In 2012, $245 billion total. So that's a huge amount of burden on our healthcare system. Now for us, located here, we are in the buckle of what is considered the diabetes belt. Now technically in Virginia Beach, Virginia Beach is actually one of the lower instances of mortality in the Commonwealth. But if you look at western Tidewater, so we're talking about Suffolk, Southampton County, Isle of Wight, Franklin, in that neck of the woods, they have the highest mortality rate of diabetes. Portsmouth is also hit pretty heavily. So we have a great variation in our local area. Now what causes diabetes? Well, we get islet death and dysfunction, and this is a common denominator in all forms of diabetes. So there's actually more than 2 forms, but the 2 are the most common, where you can get obesity and insulin resistance leading to systemic inflammation. And this causes stress on the islets, and the islets are the cells in your pancreas that produce insulin. And insulin is what allows your body to use the glucose that you take in for energy. So without insulin, your body's not able to metabolize that glucose, leading to the high blood sugars. And that then leads to diabetes. And this can be caused by autoimmunity in the case of type 1 diabetes, or the local inflammation. So type 1 diabetes, which used to be called insulin-dependent diabetes many years ago, is caused by autoimmune destruction of the beta cells so that the cells aren't able to make insulin. So you think about immunology and immunity being what protects us against illnesses. So when people get vaccines, this is what stimulates their immune system to act. Well, sometimes the immune system turns on itself and it starts killing cells in the body that it should not kill. And that's what happens in type 1 diabetes. The immune cells target the beta cells that produce the insulin and kill them, such that the patient is dependent on insulin given through shots in order to survive. And this is 5 to 10% of all cases of diabetes. There are usually some markers of immune destruction that are present so that we can properly diagnose these patients. And there are certain genes that are associated with this, although the genetic component in type 1 diabetes is not quite as strong as it is in type 2. Type 1 diabetics, because of these genes, are prone to some other autoimmune diseases as well, including celiac disease and Sjogren's syndrome. So type 1 diabetes, we really don't have a means to prevent the disease. But if we look at the beta cell mass, we see that any given patient will start with 100% of their beta cell mass. And they may be at risk, and over the course of time, pre-diabetic patients, which frequently are not diagnosed during that time. Unlike type 2, this disease can happen much faster and go undetected until it's not, until you have the clinical presentation. But during this pre-diabetes phase, after the onset of the beta cell autoimmunity, you start losing beta cells, you become intolerant to glucose, and then you're diagnosed. And as you go through the disease process, your beta cell mass generally continues to decline. So some of the studies that we are undertaking at EVMS, we are looking at whether or not viruses might contribute to the initiation of type 1 diabetes. And so can we give people vaccines that would prevent disease development, or can we treat people who are already diagnosed with antivirals and hopefully protect some of their remaining beta cell mass? So type 2 diabetes, which is far more common, we believe it's around 85% of all diabetes, and this is a question mark because people are appreciating that adults can actually get type 1. And so there are a lot of adults that are diagnosed that maybe don't fit the profile of the typical type 2 diabetic, but many of the clinicians don't realize the person could actually have autoimmune diabetes. So it's autoimmune diabetes, type 1 diabetes is not just a disease of children. But in type 2 diabetes, the pancreas may be making some insulin, but it's not enough for the body's needs because the person's taking in too much sugar and it's not producing enough insulin to cover that. And the body's cells are not responding to the insulin in the way they should. So when the insulin binds the receptors go and they don't really notice it. So the pancreas may try to overcome insulin resistance by making more insulin, but this eventually just, the beta cells just go, I give up, I can't do it, I can't keep up at this level. And there are pharmaceuticals developed for this problem that can help and can slow down the disease process. So major risk factors for type 2 diabetes include the family history of diabetes, so that would be your genetic component, including parents or siblings with diabetes, being overweight, lack of physical activity. Along with the genetics, the race and ethnicity, of course, goes along with that because of the genetics of the different ethnic groups. You're at risk if you've been previously identified to have impaired fasting glucose or impaired glucose tolerance. So that means that your blood glucose levels are higher than they should be when you do a fasting glucose test or a glucose tolerance test, which many of the women might remember drinking the god-awful orange soda that they make you drink for the glucose tolerance test, that kind of test. So that's where they look for the impaired glucose tolerance. Men, just be thankful. maybe not quite as bad as some other tests, but it's not a fun one. Hypertension, so high blood pressure. If you have high blood pressure, that increases your risk. Increased cholesterol levels, high cholesterol levels, and a history of gestational diabetes or delivery of a baby weighing greater than 9 pounds. So all of these are risk factors that feed into your risk for type 2 diabetes. And the American Diabetes Association has a great online risk assessment tool that you can answer questions pertaining to these to figure out what your risk is. And I believe that they have a day in, I think it's in March, where they really try to get people to take this risk assessment test, but I can help anyone find that later if you're interested. So the 10 fattest countries in the world. A new study out in the Lancet looks at the global burden of disease and has revealed the 10 countries with the highest rates of obesity. Anyone want to guess what number one is? You may surprise you. Yes, unfortunately the U.S. So 78 million people, or 33% of the adult population. And here's what obesity looks like. If you put two 12-year-olds in an MRI machine and look at their abdominal fat, you have a lean individual here on the left, and the white is the fat. And then looking at the obese individual, you can see how much mass that is compared to the rest of the body. So the fat doesn't just collect here in the gut. You saw that it surrounded the body, but it also, you have subcutaneous fat that's between your skin and the muscle layers, but you get fat around the heart, you can get fat around the intestines and the liver, actually within the liver. So the fat isn't just solid places, it collects within the tissues too. So, since we're coming up on Thanksgiving, I appreciate it. Days like this that I'm thankful for Insulin. He's got his mound, his volcano of mashed potatoes there, pie. You know, the turkey's great. That's nice. You know, generally a leaner meat and some protein. Green vegetables are also great. So add a lot of those to your plate. So diet and diabetes risk. The Mediterranean style diet that people have talked about over the past few years with some caloric restriction appears to be optimal for preventing diabetes and cardiovascular risks. Stay away from the sugar-sweet beverages, the soft drinks, the sweet tea, because that increases your risk 25 to 30% if you have 2 or more per day. Diets rich in fiber, vegetables, and magnesium are particularly beneficial. And data indicates that weight loss is an important factor, but some components, like fiber and magnesium content, may be beneficial as well as independent weight loss alone. So adding those fiber-rich foods into your diet can really help. And of course, food high in fat and meat confer higher diabetes risk in all genders and ethnic groups. Your lean proteins, fish, lean chicken, turkey are going to be better than the red meat. So at the Straitlands Diabetes Center, our educational and clinical missions include providing diabetes education to the public in the forms of free lectures at health fairs, coming out to events like this. We also have blood sugar and neuropathy screenings at health fairs, nutrition and diabetes education encounters at health fairs, information on the benefit of exercise programs, establish major new cardiovascular diabetes program with the Centera Health System, establish new Straitlands Diabetes Clinic in Western Tidewater region, so that's in conjunction and collaboration with the Overseas Healthcare Foundation that's really helped get out there, and the ADA has been working with them too, to get out and see patients. And We're also training the next generation of diabetes specialists, so that includes the MDs that are the clinicians and general practitioners, so specifically endocrinology, but also general internal medicine, general family practice. And also during research, we're training researchers to go into diabetes research. And we serve as the medical director of diabetes for Centura. So community-based screenings, we partnered with the Hampton Roads ADA to provide service at faith-based screenings through Project Power. We've screened over 3,500 people, with 50% have been found to be pre-diabetic or have diabetes. And this was in Suffolk, mainly. So you can imagine, half of my city where I live is combating this.
Could you define pre-diabetic? What do you mean by that?
So pre-diabetic is going to be that you have some of those risk factors, that you fall into having impaired fasting glucose or impaired glucose tolerance, your blood pressure is higher, you have a family history of diabetes. So those types of components. And again, that risk test will help you determine if that's an issue.
Is there any symptoms of having pre-diabetes that you would recognize without going through a screening?
So I don't know about symptoms of pre-diabetes. I think you can go through that and not know. Now, symptoms of actual disease onset, certainly extreme thirst, frequent urination, sometimes abdominal pain, kind of feeling like you have a flu, but really, and rapid weight loss is another.
You know, I can answer that. I am pre-diabetic. Mine was caused by radiation, screwed up my metabolism, and mine was, when they did blood testing afterwards, they discovered that I'm producing too much insulin, which eventually would have been no insulin. So I take something called metformin that controls my sugar and insulin. And it's been 12 years so far I'm still pre-diabetic. So that I wouldn't have known unless they did testing on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those silent things that you don't necessarily notice. Yes.
Most of us, we're either gonna have it or not, at our ages. I'm talking over 60. What do we tell our grandkids, 12, 15, 20-year-olds,
You know,
to prevent it?
tell them to eat healthfully. Tell them to exercise regularly.
Yeah.
I mean, those are probably the two biggest things that you can do to really keep on top of like type 2 diabetes. You know, type 1, there's not a whole lot we can say, and we don't always know who's going to have that.
Doctor, isn't it disconcerting you to see the obesity in young children today? I know it's very upsetting to me.
Oh yeah, no, I look at, you know, I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I look at the way my 8-year-old eats, not because of what I offer her, but you know what I can. She's on what I call the beige diet: the macaroni and cheese, the chicken nuggets, the.
That's for me.
And it makes my blood curdle. I'm like, whereas my 5-year-old, she'll eat Brussels sprouts. So you know, it's amazing. But I look at them and I look at what the cafeteria serves, and it hurts my heart. These kids being given junk.
Are you finding people younger? Because I noticed when I used to sell a home, and there were a lot of 30-year-olds there with diabetes,
Yeah,
and they said diet.
yeah.
And unfortunately, these were at-risk people and people with low income, and they ate the wrong foods and
Yeah.
came up and did it.
I think what we need to work on is that you can eat healthfully on a budget, and I think a lot of people don't think that way. There are ways to do it, and we need to be more proactive in our communities about teaching people, educating them about nutrition. So over 400 people have participated in our telephone management plan. 300 providers have access to online educational modules. I think it's coming. It's just really slow.
I don't know if it's.
Too early.
While that's happening, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I noticed one of the screens you had earlier, you were talking about the proliferation of this disease within what looks to be Appalachia as well as over in this area. Would you contribute that largely to diet, or is that something genetic in the population here?
I think it's both. I think certainly diet and getting back to that lower income, not feeling like they can eat healthfully on a budget, on a tight budget. A lot of those areas too, you don't have as much genetic diversity as you might find in major metropolitan areas. Where, you know, it's less of a melting pot.
Yeah.
And
Oh, that's
so
lovely.
certainly some of that, but also you notice that a lot of it's in the south, where
That's
the
right,
weather is hot, it's humid, no one wants to go outside and exercise. So there's a lot of contributing factors to those areas.
We have an online question. Somebody was asking if you can offer some advice on weight loss to try and reverse some of these issues.
Gosh, so not,
Or even just a source of, this person was looking for a source of information as well.
yeah. I know personally, since I've battled issues myself, I've found Weight Watchers to be helpful, but I don't represent them, so you can, that's just a personal thing.
Sure.
But really, just trying to keep things balanced and to watch portions and actually measure out your serving size instead of dumping a bowl of cereal or, eating out the ice cream container or whatever it is you do. Measure everything. And I think that kind of opens people's eyes. Yes?
It used to be that sugar was the evil. And I heard a doctor say one time, if you keep your weight down and exercise, you could be on a cake diet.
Yeah, exactly.
So there are certainly proponents of the idea that it does not matter what you eat as long as it's a particular number of calories. So, if you wanted to have a 1,200 calorie a day diet, which for a female is probably 1,200 to 1,500 is probably a good healthy range. If you ate that all in Krispy Kreme donuts, you could still potentially lose weight if you had been eating more than that. But that's not going to give you the benefits of the gut health. So we're finding that what you feed your body is not just feeding you, but we have more bacteria in our guts than we have cells in our body. And the bacteria that you feed are the ones that grow out, and they can cause inflammation throughout the body. They can contribute to your overall health and well-being. Certainly, we're finding roles for those in both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So if you're feeding your gut bacteria fruits and veggies and a high-fiber diet, those bacteria cause less inflammation than the bacteria that help you digest sugar and fat. So, yes, you can lose weight just through caloric restriction, but doing it in a more healthful manner is going to help many other issues outside of just the weight loss.
So moderation.
Yes, yes.
Kind of advance your program along, since we're not sure where this is going. Tell us what EVMS is doing.
So that's what I think we're trying to, yeah. You could do, pull that one. Let's see if that'll, okay, we'll try this again. So, we're looking at ways to stop damage and safely regenerate new insulin-producing cells. We're looking at the role of obesity and particularly the visceral or belly fat in leading to the development of diabetes and its complications, and identifying new targets for treatment. We're looking at why people with diabetes suffer higher rates of heart disease and NASH, which is non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, which is a liver disease, and looking for new targets of therapy there. We're also looking at, with Dr. Vinnick, reversing nerve complications of diabetes and improving the quality of life. And identifying new biomarkers for type 1 diabetes. So I mentioned earlier that it's really hard to catch people in that pre-diabetes phase, especially for type 1. And so can we find markers that indicate the disease is occurring in these patients, identify them earlier, and then does a virus trigger the development of type 1 diabetes? And there are some clinical trials with new drugs and devices going on in this center too. We are among lead programs in a type 1 diabetes research project. No. So I'll just talk about this for now. We are working with a group called the Network for Pancreatic Organ Donors with Diabetes, which is based out of the University of Florida. And this consortium has started collecting tissues from donors that have succumbed to automobile accidents, what have you, that are organ donors. And we're collecting tissues from these donors to look at disease in human patients for both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So one of the groups we're a part of is the Human Islet Research Network that uses tissues through InPod to look for markers of beta cell stress and determine what's going on, what's contributing to the initiation of diabetes. We're also working with a group to look at the viral initiation of the disease. So EVMS is the sole proteomics center looking at whether or not a virus is found in tissues from type 1 diabetics. So that's very exciting. And it doesn't like that slide. Thank you. So yeah, those are some of the things that we're doing, and we're working across EVMS, and we're not just in the Department of Internal Medicine, but working with the Cancer Center, which is where the proteomics researchers are. And hopefully we will find some evidence. We've seen evidence of the viral infection, and it looks like maybe about 50% of the cases of type 1 diabetes have viral infection. So we're hopeful that we could prevent 50% of those cases, which would be excellent. So,
Thank you very much. This is very